Welcome back everyone, Josh the driving instructor here. Today we have a very special guest. Would you like to say hello, Tom?
Hello.
Hello. So Tom has just done his driving test, and today's video is actually about how we feel physically and mentally on the day of our driving test. So I thought, what better, you've heard it enough from me and every other driving instructor, what better way than actually hearing it from someone that's just been on their driving test. So Tom, are you okay sharing some tips with us today?
Yeah, I've not got many, but we can have a go.
So can I ask you a few questions?
Yes.
So first of all, this morning, when you first got in the car, how did you feel?
I feel all right because I've been and done it before, but then again, the first time I come, it's just like another lesson with yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just that bit extra. Just sort of think of it as an extra bit on your lesson, where someone else is sat in with you.
Yeah.
And you can go about it.
Yeah.
It's important to drive the same as you drive in your lessons. Otherwise, you make silly mistakes.
Yes.
Like I've done the first few times.
Yes. So you've got to try and keep it the same as your driving lessons, essentially.
Yeah.
But how did you feel when you got up this morning? Did you think, I've got this, or were you trying to not think about it, or were you thinking overly about it?
I was a bit nervous before I left,
Yeah.
but once I made the journey here,
Yeah.
it was all right then.
Was it?
Yeah.
You ate fine?
Didn't really eat.
Did you smash a coffee back? No?
I had a coffee.
So you
I had
weren't
a coffee.
eating?
No.
No, not really.
Not a
No.
morning eater.
Any advice on, what you do on your hour before? We didn't do the standard today, did we?
No.
I know what I normally do with learners, but I asked you, what would you like to do? And what did you tell me you wanted to do?
Just focus on the roundabouts.
You wanted to focus on roundabouts.
Yeah.
You knew that roundabouts were, if anything, going to be your weakest point.
Yeah.
So that's what you went
That's
for,
what we
wasn't
did
it?
this morning.
Did it help?
Definitely helps.
Did
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So advice would be, don't just let your instructor decide on your hour before. If there's something specific you want to focus on, focus on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Most people it's maneuvers, but we both know that you're perfectly fine with maneuvers, and as you said, you were fine.
Yeah.
What did you have to do today?
Pull up on the right and
Yeah.
then reverse back 2 spaces.
How'd that go?
All right. I forgot to check one of my mirrors there.
Did you?
One of them.
You knew that.
I remember I did it as I
Good.
pulled off. I thought, oh no.
Okay.
I could see him with his iPad. I was like, no.
Okay. So how did you feel when we got to the test centre when you got out the car?
Again, I'd say I felt all right.
Yeah.
Mainly because we've been there before.
Yeah.
Familiar with the car park.
Yeah.
And the way they come out, shout your name out. As long as you're familiar with that, I think me personally, I cope better than I did the first time I went. Because it's new surroundings. I don't know the test centre.
Okay. So it's interesting. You said it's the second time you've done it, so that's made you feel better. So if it was anyone going for the first time to a driving test, what would you say?
I'd say maybe go to the test area.
Yeah.
The test centre rather.
Okay.
The day before or maybe the week before, and
Yeah.
just familiarise yourself with the surrounding roads and also the car park itself.
Brilliant.
Because you are asked to park there, aren't you? So,
Yes. Yeah. You're going to be expected to park there when you arrive
yeah.
and when you get back, regardless. Even if it's not a manoeuvre, you're still going to have to get the car somehow in the car park if you want to pass. That is.
Yes.
Yeah. So you weren't too nervous because it was the second time round.
Not really.
How many people did you have to have on your test today?
3. No, 2.
Two.
3 including myself.
2
yeah.
examiners in the car. Did you get any warning about that?
No.
No, I didn't get any warning about that. But 2 examiners in the car, one in the back, one in the front. How did that make you feel?
Initially,
Yeah.
a bit like,
Yeah.
but
And
as you drive around, it's just sort of like, as long as you focus on what you do, it's sort of irrelevant.
So you tried to blank them out.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I could see him in the rearview mirror though, that was a bit off-putting, but other than that,
You tried to ignore them.
yeah. He
Okay.
didn't say a word either, which helped. He didn't say one word to me other than hello,
That's
so that helped.
I mean, he shouldn't do, which is good. Next question. Were there any points during the test that you thought you'd failed?
Yes.
When?
I've not told you about this, so do you know where? Oh, how to explain
Like,
it?
was it halfway through the test?
It was towards the end of
Towards
the
the end,
test.
okay.
There was 2 lanes going around a left-hand one way, but one
Going
of
to
them,
Newcastle, that was,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
one of the lanes was like an orangey brownie colour. I thought, I'm in a bus lane. But the car in front of me was in it, so I thought, I'll be all right. But then I saw it was a taxi, and I thought, they do what they want anyway, don't they? Oh, it's terrible.
Taxis don't do what they want, no. No.
But as we come round the corner, I noticed it was the road into the Newcastle.
It
so
was
it
the
was all
correct
right
one.
then, yeah.
That's all right. So you thought you failed there, and then you realised it was okay.
Yeah.
Any other points?
Forgot to check this left side of the vehicle when pulling off from the left-hand side of the road. And I think...
How many times was that you pulled
it was
over?
about 7.
7
But
times.
I think that's because, obviously, they pull you over again to see if you do it right the next time.
How many times do they normally pull you
Is
over?
it 4 to 5?
3 times normally.
3,
So if they're pulling you over more than 3 times, what are they saying?
You need to fix something.
They're saying you need to
Yeah.
fix something real quick, because 5 of the same thing and you're down and out.
Yeah.
How many minors did you get?
I don't know.
I mean, we haven't actually spoken, like, what was the test result?
I passed.
You passed?
I passed.
Yeah. Brilliant. So, last thing, were there any points during the test that you thought, you know what, I've passed this, I've got this in the bag? No. No point.
Only for self-doubt, I think, looking at the bigger picture, obviously, you've driven well.
Yeah.
Done everything you need to do.
Yeah.
It's just that initial, have you passed on that? But, everyone's always going to have the doubts, so.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you will have your doubts. Even myself, anytime a driving instructor has a standards check, they doubt. I remember my standards check, the first one, when I got back, I was positive that I failed, even though my learner's telling me you've definitely passed. And sure enough, luckily I had passed, but that didn't help. And even on the next one, I know it'll be exactly the same. It's very easy to get in your own head, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why they talk about nerves and reasons for failing. How did you feel when you arrived? I mean, did you focus all the way back to the test centre, or did you start to lose focus on the way back and think, oh, I'm nearly there?
I think I did start. I recognised, because I don't know the area, I recognised the road coming round to the test centre. I thought, right, we're back now.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And then obviously I pulled into this road we've got here, and then a car come towards me, and I sort of, if I was fully switched off, then I don't think I would have seen him between the parked cars coming round.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't have had enough time to move over.
So would you say you started to lose focus on the way back?
I'd say I felt like I would have done until that had happened.
Okay.
But if you were switched off there, obviously that's it then.
Okay.
Obviously you have to stay switched on all the way around.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
So keep focus all the way back to the test centre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Big strip, big tip, that one. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
Finally, when you got back to the test centre, I came around the car. What did you think the result was going to be there?
I thought I failed it. I really did.
Yeah. Thought it was game over.
Yeah.
GG. Yeah. But you hadn't. You passed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Flying colours.
Yeah.
So any final remarks or anything about anyone that's going for the driving test?
I think me personally, I'd say don't be disheartened if you do fail it the first time. There's plenty of people out there who do fail it the first time, and just take it
including
as like,
me.
Yeah.
I failed my driving test the first time.
I'd say just take it as like an experience. You know, you've got, when you next go into the test, you've got a bit more behind you, and the cancellations are easy enough to get. So it's not like,
They are.
I think my first initial thing was like, oh, I'm gonna have to wait 6 months, but it's not like that.
No.
It's not like that.
That's a really good point that you've touched on as well. You know, it's not the end of the world. Don't pressure yourself so much about trying to get into the test, because actually you can get a test in what, say 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
It's the first thing you said to me, wasn't it? Don't be.
Yeah. Don't pressure yourself too much. 2 weeks you can get a test in if you get a cancellation app and if you get one that auto rebooks. Have you used the one that I sent you? Have you been using? You've used now cancellations.
Yeah,
well, I'll put that in the link below. If you want to have a look at that, feel free, but all the cancellations apps are pretty much the same. It's just this one has an auto rebook feature. Thank you very much, Tom. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm almost sorry to see you go. But you know, needs must.
Yeah.
Onwards and upwards.
Onwards and upwards.
Take care, everyone. Okay, before I give you my opinion on why Tom picked these top tips for your driving test, what I want you guys that are still watching the video to do right now is in the comments below, write, are you picking up what I'm putting down? That is, are you picking up what I'm putting down? Right now in the comments, let's go. Okay. So I don't know if you can see there, but Tom's actually a really calm person. He's very focused, very laser focused, okay? And what I mean by that is on his hour before his driving test, you know, he didn't speak hardly at all. It was very much the hellos, polite, how are you, etc., etc. Very polite. But when it was driving, it was no conversation, focused on what he's doing, you know, and that helped him a lot. That goes in his favor on his driving test because he's not nervous about the examiner not speaking or anything else. He's just focused on what he's actually doing. Now, this was an interesting one. Tom actually chose to do roundabouts on his hour before his driving test. Now, normally, 99% of the time, students will choose to do maneuvers, quick warm-up drive, something along those lines. But Tom didn't. Tom chose to do the roundabouts, and that's because he recognised that because he's not familiar with the area, because he doesn't live around Newcastle, lives in Congleton, which is a bit further away. He's not familiar enough with the roundabouts, and he hasn't been around here recently, so that's what he chose to do, and completely left the maneuvers, which worked absolutely brilliant. So the point being, make sure you decide as a student what you'd like to do before your driving test, okay? It's a warm-up. It's not a, there's no more teaching involved. There shouldn't be, because you're going for your driving test, but think about what you actually want to warm up with. Tom mentioned also that he recognised he made a mistake on the driving test. He forgot to check a couple of mirrors. And this is a very common thing that happens on the driving test. Students forget that they realise they've made a mistake, and then they completely show down, give up, game over, you know. And I have to try and explain this a lot. The show must go on. And rather than completely melting down about a mistake, you need to accept the fact that you've made that mistake and think, darn, that may very well be a minor. I'm going to continue on with the test and make sure I don't make that mistake again. And never, under any condition, ask the examiner to just take you back. You know what you've done, because you have no idea how that examiner is going to mark you down. Even if you think you do, you are not inside their head. Something else that really stuck out with what Tom said was that he was far more comfortable with the driving test centre and going for his test on this occasion because this wasn't his first time. So it really pointed out to me that how important it is as learners to make sure that you've asked your instructor to take you to the driving test on a prior day, the day before or a week before, and actually maybe go and do a bay park there, just so you know exactly what to expect, so they can have a chat with you, talk to you about what's going to happen, rather than waiting for the day and then having the nerves and everything else on top of trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And there's just two more points that I really want to discuss and have a think about, okay? And the first one is when Tom finished that test and the examiners, he was shaking his head to me when I was by the car. He was shaking his head and I was like, oh no. Now he's got two examiners in the car and I'm thinking, oh great. Anyway, the examiners get out, he's passed, fantastic. First he says to me, Josh, that was the worst drive I've ever done, okay? And this, again, is common. I've had people getting out of the car sweating like, oh my God, I can't believe I passed that. I don't know how, because that was the worst I've ever done. So first is the driving quality of that person actually worse than normal? Is it actually worse than normal, or is it just self-doubt and, the normal nerves that's getting to us on the test, and everything seems a lot bigger and a lot more important because of the heightened senses than it does on the average day? Or second, is the driving quality gone down because, again, the nerves, the lack of sleep, too much caffeine, the fact that you've got two examiners in the car instead of one? And if that is the case, that perhaps it's a bit of both. Perhaps the average quality does go down on your driving test because of the nerves and everything else. But this is why it's so important that we're not just at a good, reasonable par to go for our driving test, but we're actually above par and we're actually at the top of our game, okay? So we don't just want to be okay at driving, we need to be fantastic drivers. So regardless of the reason, this is why it's so important that when we actually choose to go for our driving test, that we're not just good drivers, we're amazing drivers. So when we get those nerves and everything else involved, and we inevitably make mistakes because we're human and that's what we do, that it doesn't fall so low that it's below the par that we need to pass our driving test. And I think sometimes that's where a lot of us go wrong, and that's why the nerves get to us so much, because we're not quite there. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and do check out the Patreon.